I'm Will Reuter, and this is HBA After Hours, a podcast from the Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. Welcome to another episode of HBA After Hours, the podcast produced by the Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. Today's episode is brought to you by First Federal Bank of Kansas City and Kansas Gas Service. As always, I'm Will Reuter, the Executive Vice President at the HBA of Greater Kansas City. And with me today is my co-host,
KeithSauro. I'm the publisher of Design KC and the real estate book and new home guide of Greater Kansas City. Happy to be here.
We've got a really cool episode for you today. We're going to be talking to Austin Roeser of Roeser Homes. I'm going to kick it over to him and have him tell the good folks about him, his company, and how he got into this business.
Yes. Well, thanks for the introduction,
Sure.
Keith, and we all appreciate it. Happy to be here. This is wonderful. Okay, so what do I do? What do I have? What's going on? So Roeser Homes is our main building company. And Roeser Homes, I've been doing this for 21 years now, which is crazy. It's hard to believe it's gone by.
You started when you were 8.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, I was fresh out of college and kind of got started that way and did some remodeling and kind of touched on that. And one thing turned to another. And I actually, a lot of people know this, but I followed Jim Engel for almost a year. And if it wasn't for Jim, I got a lot of kudos for him and his help. He kind of helped me understand, the single family side of things. I was all on the remodel side, so I didn't quite know. And so that really helped. But yeah, so 21 years now, which is wild. So Roeser Homes, we do a lot of stuff. We do mostly single family. And on the single family side, we have really kind of geared towards a lot of high-end custom, where our average sales price is now north of $1 million. And we can think a lot of things for that, but north of $1 million. And then we do some spec homes throughout as well. And that's 80% to 90% of our business. We've really got into the remodel side the last 2 years. And on the remodel side, they're all 6-figure projects. They're, hey, our house burned down, or we want to add, another section on. They've averaged, I think about 350 is where all of our remodels come in at. So they're big projects. But when people get into a situation like that, where, you do have a fire or you don't want to rebuild, it's got good bones, we come in and we kind of handle it from there on the design, rebuild, things like that.
How do you like the remodeling versus the building side of it?
Well, the remodeling, so, I got into it when I was younger, and I realized that I couldn't control anything on the remodel side. You open a wall up, the house is 50 years old, you find, Jimmy Hoffa, and you're like, hey, we have to bring in a company, remove Jimmy Hoffa, and Jimmy Hoffa. There's Jimmy Hoffa's, and so really, you get into these unforeseen costs, and then you got to be the bad guy. You got to go back and say, hey, we got to remove Jimmy. It's going to cost you, X plus 10%, right? So, because of that, the scalability of it became problematic. I could kind of see that pretty early, and I just got out of it. I was like, I don't want to deal with people quite like that. And when they get to live and breathe in their own home, they get to see the progress or lack of progress every single day.
Mm-hmm.
You're fighting contractors and you're fighting the buyer. You're really you got all these things coming at you, and you don't really have any control, right? Schedules are impossible. So I kind of got out of that, but we got back into it because I do like the remodel side, simply because you can kind of turn a really dilapidated kind of old kitchen or whatever. And we do kitchen remodels as part of that.
Sure.
And the average kitchen remodel, for people who are out there who want to know, hey, I want to redo my kitchen, it's about $100K is a good starting off point. And a lot of that's, am I putting in Wolf or am I putting in, a Samsung? I don't know. There's just a lot of different variables there. Yeah. So anyway, that remodeling side, I liked it, but it's the scalability aspect is pretty tough. So anyway, in addition to the remodel, and the single family, we do a lot of basement finishes. I do a lot of basement finishes on projects that we've built over the last 20 plus years. Yeah. And we do basement finishes on other builders' home. Like, you don't have
that way, you won't find Jimmy Hoffa.
You're right. It was built the last 30 years. Yeah. So we take over basement finishes, or we do basement finishes on projects that weren't ours. So if you live in a home that wasn't ours, we do that all the time. And we get them bid out. I think that people really love about us is, one is our transparency, but two is just how quick we turn things around. Like, we've done it for so long, you can go into a place and you can get really tight with your bid. Like, we know what it's going to cost. There are some variables there, but for the most part, it's pretty cut and dry in a basement finish. Remodels do take a while. We don't look at a remodel unless it's 6 figures or higher anyway. A lot of people want to do remodel, but then they get the bid and they're like, whoa,
Yeah.
They don't realize how expensive things are, and they get slapped with it pretty quickly, and so we try to let people know up front, like, hey, before we dive into this is 6 figures. Are you comfortable with that? And if they say no, then we say, well,
Yep,
you're going to just live with it for a while, But so, and then outside of basement finishes, we do tear downs. Most of those are in Old Leewood, Prairie Village, just Reinhardt, just kind of that area, and we've done quite a few of those. Those are fun. Those are rewarding because you're taking this house that was built in the 50s and it's literally falling in on itself, and you're
couldn't fix it if you wanted to.
You shouldn't fix it. I've seen some, they tried. But yeah, you tear them down and you go through the whole, you're removing asbestos and all of that stuff that some people don't want to tackle. And then you're building a brand new, now they're in the millions now in Prairie Village. I remember we were doing them in the 7s, and that was a day or two ago, and now they're in millions.
Desirable land, can't make more of it.
True. And that's, what they say in real estate, right? It's location, location, location. You kind of start there and kind of work from there. And people love that PV area. It is a little landlocked, in my opinion, but people love it. So if you grew up there, you're going to come back with your family and raise your kids there. It's a great place to do that. And so we do a lot of that as well. And it's a good area to do that in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, outside of, what's this going to cost? What are some of the more frequent questions you get from buyers as they're, deciding whether or not to turn where they live into a construction site?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of questions, Will, but it really depends on where we're at in the process, right? So if someone just comes to us and they say, hey, we want to build a house, you kind of work from, well, what do you want? Where do you want to live? What do you want to spend? And you kind of work backwards from that a little bit. So if our wheelhouse is a buyer who's wanting to spend $1 million at Overland Park or Olathe or Lenexa or something like that, we kind of work from, all right, well, what are the most important things for you? We kind of work from that on terms of, all right, we doing a reverse, a story and a half, 2-story, most of our $1 million+ product is story and a half or reverse. The 2-story product we used to do a lot of, but we're kind of pricing people out of it. Those are good I don't say entry level, but growing families love a 2-story, and it's really hard to deliver one for us under $1 million.
Right.
But a lot of it comes down to financing today. We get a lot of that initially. Is like, well, they know what they want. Like, yeah, it's our 2.3 kids and we want this beautiful wooded walkout lot. We're willing to spend this. And so in addition to just the, how much is it for a walkout? How much do I get for this allowance or that allowance? You dive into some of the details, which is kind of getting down into the, how are we going to finance this project? Surprisingly, one of the turns that we've seen, and I know the data's there to show it, we've seen a lot of cash buyers come out.
Yeah. Right.
And so, our cash buyers, as you can imagine, they're like, well, what sort of discount do I get, for paying cash? I'm like, well, none. Unfortunately,
Right.
The bank's it's still the same. If the cost is the cost, whether you pay in cash, you cut a check, I don't really care. But still the kind of the finance around it, and even lately, and this is a good kind of another topic, but we have some people who are really concerned about tariffs and how that's going to impact their build. And we've had a few people say, hey, we're going to wait until we feel a little more comfortable with the environment, in terms of the tariff environment and rate environment, but with the rate environment, I tell people like, hey, rates probably are going to trend downward for the next foreseeable future. And, to try to catch the right wave or to guess is, it's anybody's game, but I think you're probably pretty safe knowing that you're going to be lower today than you will, or lower tomorrow than you are today. And so I think a lot of people have gotten over the fact that rates are, 6.5. I don't know what they are today. I haven't looked.
It's like the new reality.
It is kind of the new reality.
Right.
Like when we did our first home, I was at 8.5, and that was good. And he was like, oh, that's not bad. I know there's older people who are like, oh, I was at 18. It's not where we are today, but I think the absorption of the 6-ish percentage points have kind of soaked into people's minds. Like, okay, that's probably not a bad rate. But yeah, and then we can, the lock-in effect of people, and that's a whole other conversation. But really just kind of the rate and how they're going to finance it is kind of the first hurdle. And then we get into the, hey, how long is this going to take? Right. So, we've got, depending on the project, if this is, a smaller reverse, all of our contracts we sign today, that is around $1 million, are a 12-month contract where we're spending the first 60 to 90 days drafting plans, getting permits, going through engineering, and then you're really looking at like a 9-month physical build, right? When you get into the north of the $1 million, we're really diving into a lot of details, and it's really hard to really push that on a traditional schedule. So
Sure.
if you're doing custom, just everything's custom, we're hitting $3 million. This is going to take us 16 to 18 months. It might take us longer.
Cuts from a lot of different places.
Yeah, there's, we get designers involved. It goes a completely different way on the build, which is totally fine. And that expectation is, up front, like, hey, this is a 2-year build, or this is an 18-month build. If it goes over 2 or 3 months, that's just could happen.
Sure.
If it comes in 2 or 3 months earlier, then, great. But that expectation is lined out early, and most people are pretty comfortable with that. And then it just dives down from there. We're diving into just the little details. Everyone wants to really hone in on exactly how much the house is going to cost before they get started. And we do a really good job of like, hey, you're, plus or minus 10%, you're right there. As the house gets less custom and lower priced, obviously we can hone in for, really
Pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're in a $3 million project though, and it goes up $100,000, that's probably no big deal to that person. If I'm billing you 800 and it goes up $100,000, you're freaking out.
That's a deal breaker.
It's a deal breaker. And so, they're all projects are created not equally. They're all a little different. So
What's the biggest piece of advice that you would give someone that's a brand new build job, somebody that's never built a home before? What kind of advice would you give them?
just let me do my job. Trust me. I've done this a long time, and the people that worry about, their studs being wet outside, those are red flags.
Oh, sure.
We've done things for, like I said, 20 plus years. We do it right. We have a good reputation. We're going to build you a wonderful home. Let me help you, guide you, so that this project can stay on track and stay on budget. It can be a better building experience for you. We line things out with our buyers so that they only have to kind of answer what's in front of their nose. When you're building a house, there are 20,000 steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I give you all 20,000, you'd freak out. You'd worry about, step 18,000. Well, we're only at step 1. And so we break it out to where it's just this drip of, I need this. We need to do this. We need to do that. And I will say, whenever we get a designer involved, they do go better because the designer is a professional. They know what they're doing. They help coach and justify what I tried to say. So if you have 2 people saying the same thing to a buyer, they're like, oh, that must be true.
Well, then you have 2 counselors, right?
You're 2 counselors helping them out the whole way, and it does go a lot smoother. But yeah, if you just lean into the professionals, you're gonna have a good experience. That's the best advice I could give.
Yeah. I mean, we've spent a number of years over the past few years hearing over and over again, listen to the experts.
Yeah.
Listen
to the experts.
And that, that's part of this entire housing ecosystem that we find ourselves here in Kansas City, is that the experts are all members of the HBA.
Mhm.
Like if you need expertise or you want to know what, the nuts and bolts of this, concerning thing that you've got related to housing, the answer is at the HBA. And the people that, have made their entire professional life about delivering housing at varying price points, geographically diverse around the metro. All of that expertise exists here. And if you ask one of the professionals and they don't know, they know 10 people who do.
Yeah.
They'll connect you with.
Absolutely. Ask questions, right? That's another important piece of advice that I give to our buyers is ask questions. The more people that are involved in this project, typically is the better. You can be a good eye for this. Ask a question. Let us look into it and fix it or give you the right answer, and let things go well. It's when people let things just kind of bubble for a while, and then they'll put out 10 things that are maybe right, maybe not, but just like, hey, let's have a good open, honest conversation about it. They go very well when we have a good rapport with our buyer.
I bet. What do you hope that a homeowner comes to the table with? I hear a lot in my space, we publish magazines, right? So people tear out pages, they go on the internet, they print out things, ideas. What do you hope somebody comes to the table with as they start a conversation with you about?
That's a good question, Keith. I love it.
Yeah.
Probably pulling pictures out of your magazine.
That'd be good.
Right? Because so typically I get involved after the sales cycle is already over. And I only work with buyers on custom higher end projects. When I get involved with them, their first amount of homework, I give them homework after our first meeting. And what it is, and most of them are already, 10 steps ahead, is I say, I need photographs. I need pictures off the internet, out of a magazine, whatever. If there's an inspiration photo that you love, rip it out of the book and keep it. That way we can look at it together later. That way you can take it to a professional. Because I say that the hardest thing for you to understand as a buyer, you don't know construction lingo. You don't know the specific detail or the look. You know what it looks like. You can show a piece of,
they might not even know what they don't like, but they know what they like.
But if you start off with that and say, this is what I want, right? Then my cabinet professional can look at that and be like, I know that's a 1/4 inch reveal and it's offset this, and they just know, right? Whereas, the buyer, they're not going to know half of that stuff. So the more photos they can provide, the better. It lines up the rest of the build, and it kind of sets the expectation, like, this is what I want. This is what I want. And it just makes the building experience a little better.
Good.
Yeah. And if somebody says, well, I'm thinking gray. It's like, great. That narrows it down to the 10,000
shades of green. Yeah.
Show me what it is that catches your eye, that what you want to see when you turn this corner in your house and you see that accent wall or your backsplash or whatever. Show me what that looks like, because we all have, proprietary definitions of what our own words mean.
True.
And so we need to break it and standardize this as best we're able. Pictures do it amazing.
Oh, I always tell people, I say words are hard, pictures are easy. It's hard to express. Even, I've been doing this for a long time. Sometimes it's hard for me to get the words out of what I want. But if I have a photo, I'm like, okay, this is what we're working from. This is what we need to do and accomplish. Everyone can see that photo and they can put their own words in their head. And like, yeah, that's what we need. That's where our goal is to make that happen.
It makes it very black and white.
So easy.
I mean, we're recording this in Kansas City, Missouri, and they literally named the nickname of the state after that exact dynamic. Show me.
Yeah.
It's the show me state. It's the show me metro.
Great. I'm going to use that.
Just show me what it is you're looking for.
Perfect. So when you think about the biggest challenge for a new potential person who's building a home, right? What would you say the biggest challenge is for them to understand throughout the process?
Oh, man. Keith, put me on the spot. The biggest challenge, I would just say patience.
Yeah.
When we get started in our design meetings, that's what we call, when I work with buyers, our design meetings is our first 90 days is what we lay out. In those meetings, the patience thing is huge, because I tell people, I go, we live in a world today where, like, I could pop on Amazon and I could deliver groceries before I get this podcast finished.
It's a
now environment. I go to Target, who's not a sponsor, by the way, and they should probably look into sponsoring this episode. But if I go to Target and I'm like, hey, I look on the shelf and I find something I want, it gives me the price, I take it, I put it in my cart, I check out, it's mine, I'm done. Like, it's just an instant gratification world that we live in. And with home building, it's like, hey, I want this. And then it's like, okay, great. Well, now we're going to design it. We're going to, try to install it, but the schedule's not going to be, they're going to be a little late. Oh, wait, guess what? It snowed. So then it's late and it gets installed. And then, we got to fix a couple things. And it's this back and forth with contractors. It's this fun little dance of getting it all to, like, ultimately,
right,
I'm going to get you there. Right. But if you come in midway through and it's half installed and not painted, that's going to test your patience.
Sure.
Like, why isn't this done? Why is this not in my photo? Like, well, patience, grasshopper. Well, let's get this thing done first. Judge me at the end. Don't judge me in the middle, kind of thing. Right. And so the patience is probably one of the most difficult aspects of building.
I bet.
And some people, quite frankly, they don't have it. And they're not candidates for building. And I can spot them a mile away. And we have, I probably shouldn't say this, but we have stuff in staff where we'll flag an account like, yeah, this one's going to be challenging.
Well, but that's important, because part of that is the personality for both sides. Right?
It is. Absolutely. Because yes, I'll just leave it at that. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, what are a couple, people need to know, what are a couple of the red flags? If you're having questions with a consumer that's thinking about building, what are a couple of those red flags that say, maybe I should buy resale instead of building in this scenario?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be timing is one.
Yep.
And then you can kind of get it. I don't want to, typically our engineers and our attorneys are some of the harder clientele to deal with, because they are, on the engineering side, they know a little too much. They don't know too much. They know things that apply to sometimes on the commercial side, and it doesn't really translate well to the residential side. And Kansas City is a unique environment anyway, in the building side, as you guys know. And the attorney side, they're always, quick, used to getting things done fast and kind of being an A-type personality. And sometimes those things don't quite work because in order to be patient, you have to rely on the professionals to kind of do their job.
It goes back to what you said
It just goes
earlier.
back to that. Yeah. And then the timing thing is if someone's like, hey man, we got to be this quick. I'm like, well, this might not be right for you. And just being able to handle the pressure. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say because technically they're not doing anything, like stroke a check and leave and we'll handle it for you. But some people just can't handle the decision-making process to select tile, to select low voltage speakers, how the trim's going to look, what your cabinet design is, how that's going to match up with the appliances in the courts. And it's just, every decision impacts another decision.
Sure.
And so the compounding nature of that sometimes, freezes people up a little bit. They're like, I don't know if, I can do that, or that might be overwhelming to me. And you can kind of see it in their eyes a little bit in the beginning. And we implore those people like, hey, get a designer. They will lead you down the path of success and they will only put in front of you what you can handle.
Right.
And I always tell people like, hey, I'm your builder. I'm not your designer. I love doing it. We do that as well on specs, but on your home, you're the designer. You're the buyer and designer. I am just your general contractor. I will build you anything you want, but you have to be able to properly communicate what it is that you want.
Sure.
And because you're not a professional, you should probably have one in your corner on the design side to really help out. And again, that's on our higher end projects. But yeah, that's important.
And, just like every buyer is different, every builder in the market has a different process.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we don't want people necessarily to get discouraged if their first interaction with their first interview with their first builder doesn't go according to plan. It doesn't mean that this isn't for me.
Right.
I can't even engage the entire industry whatsoever.
You might need to talk to someone different.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we tell people all the time, go out and make your best deal. And very rarely is the first conversation you have going to be your best or only option. We seek out multiple sources of information. We take multiple bids for all of those things. I mean, you don't get your trees trimmed in your backyard without having 3 companies come out and take a look at it. Shop it around a little bit and find someone whose personality jives with your own. There's going to be different speeds, different communication styles. Maybe, the builder you're talking to is not a texter, but that's your preferred method of communication. There's going to be a guy out there or a gal that's going to communicate with you that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's every buyer. They, judge that interaction with your builder. And this kind of gets into how we choose a builder conversation that we were talking about earlier. Like your communication and your conversation should feel natural. It should be, you should walk out of that meeting feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, maybe that's a red flag as a buyer. Like, all right, well, maybe I need to go find someone else.
Or ask a few more questions at bare minimum.
Yeah, exactly. Be prepared to, if you do have another meeting, to ask more questions.
I mean, the bottom line is this: we have a real inventory problem in Kansas City. That's not going to change anytime soon. It's a great time to be a builder. Why should someone hire you, Austin? What makes you so special? Because I know you have a great game and you do great work.
I am special. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad you recognize that on our podcast. I would say it's just transparency and just the honesty that we provide. And I know when you call in 913-220-7477,
what was that number again?
Or visit us on our website at roeserhomes.com. You will find that our response time is the fastest in Kansas City. I just call right now. You'll find out. And that first meeting that you have with Thad Snyder's our vice president, you're going to feel welcomed. You're going to feel educated. You're going to walk out of that meeting and be like, oh my God, wow. Okay. I might not be ready for what's the next second meeting, but oh my God, I feel educated. And that transparency and that, just attention to you as a client is really what sets us apart. Because if you compare that to your first meeting or response time with any other builder, it's not going to be as quick. That meeting's not going to get set up for a while. And it's something that we see a lot of. And it is a little surprising, I got to be honest. We get a lot of people that come in and call us like, well, we tried, with somebody else and they were like 3 weeks out. And so here we are. And like, well, this is going to probably be your only meeting because we can deliver what you want. Never going to be the cheapest at all, but we will definitely be the best quality and most transparent of the process. I think that's what people really really like and appreciate when they build with us.
Well, I think that addresses one of the lingering misperceptions out there about the home building space in Kansas City anyway, or really home building space across the country, is that this is just a very naked cash grab, profiteering. It's what you just described speaks to the relational nature of what this process is. It has to work for the builder as much as it works for the client, and vice versa. It's so much more relational than simply just boiled down to a transaction.
Yeah.
And, we want, at least in my view, we want informed buyers, but we want there to be a level of trust that exists between the builder and the home buying public. Because that's the only way any relationship in our society works.
Sure.
Is if there's trust there.
Let alone probably the biggest investment that most people will ever do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's important for me, because hopefully it's their biggest purchase and they don't,
unless they have a business or something, big investment.
That's true. I'm just buying a house from Roeser Homes then if you've got that much.
Right.
I just don't know where I was going with that, Keith, but
Built too.
built too. Yeah. Well, I was saying it's important that the experience with us goes well because my name is obviously associated with it. And I'm friends with a lot of these people, clients, after we build. We're in the same circles. Kansas City's not very big. Life is too short for me to have people out there hating what we do. It's just not worth it.
It's so true.
And
I've only they tell one, you do something wrong, they tell 10.
100. Yes, absolutely. And so, maybe it's because I've done this for so long now that I'm like, that's more important for me to just have happy people than it is to turn over houses.
Right.
And I'll be honest, you were there at one point. We were like, all right, how many houses can we build? And that's just not where we're at anymore. And I'm so happy for that.
Yeah. Well, when you started 21 years ago, what was the thing that kept you up at night on like day one of your
Oh my God.
And then compare that to what keeps you up at night here in year 20.
That is a good question. Well, I was up a lot. Yeah, I was 22, 23, and I had started this building company and I didn't know I was young and dumb.
You didn't even know you should have been terrified because you didn't know enough to be scared.
That's exactly right. But what I did know is I knew
that's good.
but I knew how much money I owed.
Yeah.
And this was pre-recession, what was that, 07?
If people are listening to this podcast, chances are they know what we're talking about when we say recession.
Yeah, that recession, the big recession. So it was pre that. So I was people would loan money. If you were building a doghouse, they'd give you money and the banks would, right? It was easy to get money back then. And so ironically, that's kind of what allowed me to get in was the ease of borrowing at the time. And so, I think what kept me up at night was just the fact that, oh my God, I owe like $10 million. How in the hell how would I ever pay that back? And
eventually
you pay it back, right?
Get for it.
I'm good for it.
I got them covered.
I got an IOU. You're going to want to keep that one. And so all of the open things, because in the beginning you do everything, right? I do the marketing back then, right? Which isn't anything, but you do that. You do the bills. You're a one-man show, right? You kind of make some hires. You hire a few people, and they take a few things out of your hand. Then you worry a little bit about employees, and you worry more about things and less about others, and it ebbs and flows. Today, I owe a lot more than that, and I don't worry about paying it back because something went wrong, or you pay back $50 million. You don't. You just. So I don't worry too much about that. I think over the last 20-something years, I've just kind of dulled it down, so I don't worry too much about the dollars. I worry just about all my staff. I worry about all of our houses and our buyers. I just worry about the whole thing. I want to try to. I think my job now is to try to I'm the captain of the ship. I'm just trying to avoid the icebergs. I'm just trying to all right, what's the next best move? Because I've got in my wake, I've got dozens of staff. I've got thousands of contractors, and all the money out of the banks. There's so much kind of right behind me that I don't want to ruin any of that. I don't want to put anyone out of a job. I don't want to piss off a buyer, and so it's just the unknown. I think I worry a little about the unknown. It's all right, what's the next best step? And is that the right move? I get a lot, everyone who's close to me will call me like, he's the no guy. He'll say no. Ask him a question, he'll say no. And that's kind of, it's kind of funny, and it's true. But it's because you'll ask me to do something or a question, and I've become accustomed to thinking of it kind of circular. Like I'll attack it from 15 different ways, up and down, left and right, before I agree to whatever the change is or the move is, because I want to know.
Well, you see the big picture.
Yeah, I game plan it. I'm like, all right, if I just say yes, what happens then? If I say yes and this happens, what happens there? If I say yes, and so I'm just, I'm constantly game planning stuff, and I think that's just it. It's just worrying about all the things I don't know. Just a lot.
Not uncommon.
I think that response is so interesting, because you started out at the outset, you're on the hook for all of those, all that startup capital to get an operation going that you're going to be able to, find some income with, take it to scale, all of those things. But you were worried about you because you were the sole signatory.
Yeah.
To that. And now fast forward to today, and you just described your clientele, your employees and their families, and the people that you owe the money to. You're concerned about.
I just worry about everybody else except myself.
You're the last person that you were worried about. I just find that maturity over the course of those decades so interesting.
I'm glad it's maturity. I'm glad we said it was maturity. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I'll use that.
Well, when you take care of your people, they'll take care of you.
Yeah, 100%.
Right,
absolutely.
And they play for you.
Yeah, and it's super important, and I can't stress that enough. I know that I don't have the biggest empathy badge that I wear, and I get that. I think my nose is down, and I'm a doer. Like, I just get shit done. Oh, that's after hours, getting shit done. But I just do, and I sometimes I don't come up for water or air, and then I'm like, oh, so and so celebrated 10 years with us. Oh my God, that's awesome. And I am horrible at that. I know that. However,
you have somebody that keeps you straight.
I do.
Right?
Yeah, I do. And I'm so grateful for everyone that I've had the pleasure of working with and doing business with. And because it can go understand like how important relationships are and how important other people are in your success.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown, right?
Yeah, I've heard that stuff too.
But it's true.
Yeah.
It really is true, because the buck stops with you.
Yep.
Right? You're responsible to make sure all these homeowners are happy, all your employees are fed and paid and all that. So kudos to you. And I've been through many of your homes. They're amazing. You do an absolutely incredible job.
Thank you.
Yeah. How are some of the ways that people listening to this can go see like an actual representation of what it is you bring to the market?
I think Parade of Homes coming up.
Well, yeah. It's, well, that's interesting. You threw that in there. The Parade of Homes is coming up. Was it this April?
And they
twice a year.
That's like before you said.
And one of the largest, longest standing Parade of Homes in the industry, I believe. But yeah, so in addition to the Parade of Homes, you can see, I believe we have 7 entries. I don't know. I'd have to look at that. But on our website, everything is up to date, and you can see a list of the inventory that we have. There are a couple models on there, but it says model. It's always open from 8 to 5, Monday to Saturday, and you can always go check it out there. So yeah, I'd say check out our website, roeserhomes.com. You can see a list of product and homes that are open.
That's great.
I obviously that was a very leading question.
Very leading. Well, you led me to the trough there.
I wanted to bring it kind of full circle back to what you were talking about, and working with clients about bringing photos, to see what it is that you want. Voters, consumers, everyone, they act visually.
They do.
They're visually activated. And so, you can only make so many decisions based on a rendering. Or, if we're taking something for a planning commission for a neighborhood or something like that, and you show, hey, this is what it's going to look like, and it's drawn with colored pencils, that's not real.
Mm-hmm.
But a home that's in the ground with a driveway that you pull up to and you feel feelings when you see it.
Right.
This could be mine. It just evokes that very emotional response to home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we need for people to make informed decisions as well, is to have some kind of physical experience with it as well.
100%. I couldn't agree more. The emotional response people have entering the home, and I'm going to mess up the statistic, but it's like the first 60 seconds or 90 seconds of someone entering the home is when they've made their decision on that home, right? That's why I feel like it's super important for us, and probably any builder out there listening, to have a model home. Like we had the Target analogy earlier. Like if I don't have product on the shelves, you're not going to know what the product is. You're just going to take my word on the description, right? And so if I have a home for you to go in, look at the quality, open the cabinets, just get a feel for the space, the ceiling height, just all of it, right? You're going to feel more comfortable moving forward with us building you something very, very similar or exact to that actual house. And so, yes, the having a model home is, I think, by far one of the best marketing tools that we can have. And then kind of touching base a little bit on the photos, because it is important. I mean, yes, having a model, I think, is number one. In addition to that, having supplemental, marketing stuff, whether it's in print or whether it's, our social media, we've just kind of really gone to a next level on that. We are a marketing a team that is helping us with that. Having those visuals, video is super important as well. To people can kind of see product that maybe it is a custom home that they're not ever going to get to go see, but they get to see a video or some photographs of it and show the work that we are capable of doing.
Well, I know Roeser builds million-plus homes, right? But we were talking a little bit earlier, you have another division of your company that it's kind of focused more on even affordable housing.
It is.
There's a real need for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us about
that. Keith, Harlow Homes is a company that we started about a year and a half ago. And it's taken me a while to get to this point. And it's one of those writing on the wall situations where, we went through COVID and then we had this huge escalation in both interest rates and in inflation. And, building what were you, Will, you're going to help me out here and correct me. 45% more dollar for dollar price of a home? It's 40%. It's high, right? So like if you were building a $500,000 house, now it's 800 or something, right?
Yes, that type of exact same square footage. Everything's just 40 to 50%.
Yeah, right. So I think it
fluctuates between that.
Yeah, I think it was like 45% nationally, but regardless, like we saw that and thought, well, man, what we need some entry level housing, or what affordable housing is what we call it. Entry level is a tough one, but affordable housing. And so Harlow Homes was created basically to really reinvent how we build homes. I took a national perspective, and if you build nationally, you will go in, you will pick tile A, B, C, color 1, 2, 3. See, in 6 months you're gonna have your house. We're not gonna allow you to move an outlet. We don't hang your grandma's light.
You don't have 60 change
None
orders.
of that. There's no change orders. It's just pick it, come back in six months. So that's the philosophy that we have with Harlow. And it's really meant to increase efficiency, the speed of the build, by removing the buyer and really kind of making it as easy of a build as possible. We've been able to streamline that process and therefore keeping prices down quite a bit. And so Harlow we do duplex products, and then we do single family villas. And so it's that philosophy that we have basically kind of borrowed from the national builder and just basically pushed that forward. And that product is just one of those where, it's new for us. So I'm in the baby end of the swimming pool so far on that. And we're going to work our way into the deep side. But if you build those, man, they go fast.
Oh, there's a need.
Because there's a need.
Huge need.
There's a huge need for that housing.
Kudos to you.
And, $450 is the lowest price point of that. We have a lot of them in the
Isn't that the
450s.
median household price around that?
It was
National, the Kansas City median new home sales price is $459.
Yeah, right on there.
And so this is new. This is new construction, not not new or existing, or sorry, not existing.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's affordable. It's more affordable to a lot of people. It's brand new. It's got the warranty. It's got the new home smell. Like, you're going to go a lot of years without any worries on it.
First person to occupy it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Your dog can pee on that carpet before any other dog.
You got to make your mark.
You got to make your mark.
And that is not covered by the
No, that is not a warranty item.
Correct.
But so it's filled a need, and it's important because I get it. Like, who out there is building a $9 house? Not many people. And we get that, but a lot more people can build 400, 450, 500.
Sure,
of course. That's more attainable.
You can go on, Ford's website and order an F-150 with all of the bells and whistles. You can go through and get every selection you want, but that's not all of the vehicles that are being produced. There's not the capacity for everyone to do that. Cost associated with it, delivery times, all those. That's why we have car lots where they've predicted based on best practices what the most likely model is going to be absorbed by the market. Yes. We have to do the same with housing because we have to speed up. We need volume. I mean, we're tens of thousands of units of housing short.
Oh yeah.
what we would need in this market. And so every roof that gets built that can be bought by the person that's going to be occupying it is a good thing.
A great thing.
From an economic standpoint, from a cultural standpoint,
thing.
you name it. We got to have it. And so, kudos to you for, finding ways to differentiate your product offerings and deliver something that up to a client base that would never be able to touch some of your higher end Roeser.
Yeah. What's the web address for people to learn more about Harlow Homes?
Well, so Harlow is owned and done by Roeser Homes. The Harlow Homes website is actually under construction right now, but it's harlowhomeskc.com.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
great.
So maybe it's up by the time somebody's listening, but yeah. So we kind of thought initially that at least our goal was, you have so many people in these apartments right now. Our thought was, all right, you're 30 years old, you're creating household formations, your girlfriend or wife bought a dog. Okay, and now it's time. I want my own garage, my own yard. That's kind of that next evolution of that. 30 years ago, you were going from college to a home. Now we've added another step in the middle. And we've kind of gone apartment because of the affordability issue. And so our thought is, well, how long are you going to be in an apartment? At what point you're like, dang, I hate my neighbor. I don't want to go 3 flights of stairs to get to my house, or it's cold out, I don't have a garage, whatever your hurdle is. A duplex is a great way to get into that housing market, own your own home, have the control over that you want to, have a yard, have a fence, it just seems like the natural evolution. It is taking us longer though, because of the affordability issue, but it's a good mid-tier before you maybe get into something a little more expensive.
If anybody can figure it out, it will be you.
We're trying.
Well, there's going to be virtue in the effort because, as product like that, it's indicative of the innovation that exists within the residential construction market. It's not rinse and repeat. Yeah. Every project is unique, but there's also a constant assessment going on within the home building space in Kansas City about what is the market currently producing compared to what the market is calling. And can we expand the bounds of what we're currently delivering to go out and reach more of those? Because, it's unreasonable to expect someone to go from a dormitory into a $750,000 house. Yeah. There has to be, an ecosystem that exists between the two. And
it's just too big of a step to take nowadays.
So every way we can work backwards, it makes that jump to the next level up that much lower. Because we've created a very unreasonable and therefore unachievable jump that has to be made again from going from a $2,500 a month 2-bed 2-bath apartment into something that's $750,000. It's just not going to happen without the First United Bank of mom and dad jumping in and bridging that gap.
100%. Well, contrary to popular belief, builders aren't stupid, and we do recognize and listen to everyone in the market, right? And we see the fact that, hey, if I built a standard 3,000 square foot home in Overland Park, that's not attainable to anybody anymore. Well, not it is to some, but
it's not attainable to everybody.
Not to everyone, and not traditionally to your, hey, I just graduated college and I'm, that's too big of a leap to make nowadays. And so there are, especially in Kansas City, there are pockets of guys who see they're like, hey, this product, we need more of it, right? And we need a lot more of that affordable housing because we simply can't keep producing $1 million product and expect people to kind of move into it.
And at the end of the day, rents are through the roof. Right?
Yeah,
so if you can find that opportunity for
exactly. And fast forward a year and a half from now, and rates are touching 5.5, maybe 5 3/4. That really changes the affordability level for a lot of people. And we see that when rates dip, we see a wave of people begin to come out of the woodwork and ask questions and feel a little more comfortable. And so every 10th quarter of a point is big.
I mean, if you go from, today's, upper 6 interest rate to something upper 5, you're looking at least $1,000 a month less in your mortgage payment for what that's going to be. That's true buying power.
Oh, it's huge buying power. Yeah. And buyers will continue to see that buying power improve as time moves forward to some degree. Don't wait too long. Right? Like I've got a buddy who's like, hey man, tell me when to refi. Like, tell me when we're kind of close to the bottom. I'm like, well, first off, I don't have a magic 8 ball, but I will tell you when I think we're close, but you don't want to wait too long. Cause if you try to time the market on anything, you're probably going to be wrong.
Right.
But if you can get, like hand grenades, we just get close and you're gonna be all right. I mean, right now is a good time to get off the fence and go look and start knocking on,
property values are not going to go down.
No,
People think they're going to go down.
No,
we've been
to several economic forecasts, and everyone's like, it's about 5% this year. Like, yeah, I'm getting increased letters. We get them in December, we get them in January, and they're all 3 to 5%. So unfortunately, that means your house is going to be 3 to 5% more, and it's going to be 3 to 5% more next year, and it's going to be the same the year on. So if you're thinking about, I'm going to wait a year, it's going to be cheaper. No.
The only time that ever happens is when something bad really happens.
Something bad.
No one has the money to buy.
And then when things are, the sky is falling, you're not out there buying.
Correct. You don't even have the money.
You're
at that point.
Yeah, you're out of work. You're holding on. Yeah, you're going to work. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so, when it comes to interest rates, if you just look at, the way that most people look at housing, they're looking at a place for them and their families to live.
Mm-hmm.
You're purchasing shelter. It's not a tax haven. It's not a good investment vehicle. It's a place for you to live. And so interest rates are going to do one of three things from where they are today. They're either going to go down, at which point you refinance. They stay the same, at which point you're no better or worse off, or they go up, at which point you look like you're smart because it went up and you were low. So it's the interest rates.
That's Will's trifecta. Let's call that Will's trifecta.
And so, if you're going to be there for a long time, the way that cyclical markets work and housing markets work, eventually you're going to get to a point where you can make an assessment. Do I want to lower my interest rate and restart the clock?
I think what he's trying to say is you date the rate and you marry the house.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of marriage material out there in the market that we'd be happy to put buyers into these days.
Yeah. There's not enough of it, but there is product out there.
And that's another thing. When you mentioned tariffs a little bit, that's one of the things that I've kind of conditioned, some of the folks that are constantly asking whether it's a media person or a market watcher, whatever, about the tariffs. I said, look, there is already a ton of product that is in various stages of production right now that are going to be less susceptible to whatever happens, because it's anybody's best guess as to what that's actually going to look like. So if you're worried about that, that doesn't mean you just go hands off and back off the market. It means go out and find something that's going to be less susceptible, something that's already framed where you can still have an opportunity, to make some selections, and be able to quasi customize.
Yeah. Anything that's anywhere near construction right now, the tariff is, they're not going to impact it.
Exactly.
If there's a home, a foundation, even, tariffs aren't going to impact that.
And there's only so much of that in the ground right now,
right,
because that process would have had to start like 8 months ago. So.
Yeah, and I'm not real worried about this tariff. I know that there's a lot of, I just read a lumber composite from another group that puts these out every week, a weekly report on that. And actually, the lumber market's actually down the last week. It's just a lot of unknown, right? It's like, hey, what's going to happen, right? But there isn't enough construction. There's not enough demand for lumber to really shoot off, right? So if this were COVID and we've got 7,000 permits or 6,000 permits going in the city here, and you've got this huge demand all over the nation, and we're dealing with tariffs, I would have some pause. I'd be like, we could be in trouble, right? Because you've got demand, you've got tariff, you just got a perfect storm brewing. Right now, we just don't have the demand. There's just not a lot of buying right now nationally. And so there's so much material product, lumber, already sitting in lumber yards, waiting to go out, that it's not a huge concern of mine. Now, again, fast forward, I think April 2nd is our next tariff discussion. So if we're in, May 2nd or June 2nd, I mean, maybe we'll have a little bit more information at that point. But right now, it's just kind of, I think this is a ploy on negotiating, and I don't think it's really going to impact us too much. We already see tariffs. There's already tariffs that exist. How much more does that really impact us? On the panel side, it's not going to be a lot. I know we're getting into the weeds there, but I'm not that worried about it.
There's lots of things that happen on that, but I was listening to a podcast not too long ago, and they said that the one thing about tariffs is that that's the most visible thing. So when you talk about it, it's so visible people can understand. But there's so many other things that are going on that can affect pricing. That it's not just the tariff, right? But that's the dirty or good word or whatever you want to call it.
Right. It's easy for people, the layman, to kind of attach to and be fearful of. Right. It's an excuse to not get off the fence.
Right. And there's always a reason to stay on the side.
Absolutely.
So if you're ever looking for a reason to give you pause, you'll always find it.
Correct.
And so that's what, this conversation is all about is, hey, is this podcast going to provide you every answer to every question you've ever had? Absolutely.
Yes.
I was going to say, I thought it was yes. You can talk me into it.
Okay.
We've given I have checked every box, Keith. What else do you see? What have you
Austin gave all the
answers?
Yeah. But what we want are people to ask questions and to find that next piece of their own housing puzzle, to keep putting it in place, keep moving forward. We're not saying go out and buy your house tomorrow if you're not ready, but don't artificially put off that date because of some unknown factor.
Right. If you want to find a way.
Find a trusted partner
Mhm.
with a member of the HBA, and they're going to walk you through a process, and they're going to get you into a fantastic home at a price you can.
Absolutely.
100%.
So,
It's great.
Austin, that's about all we've got. Do you have any words of wisdom for Keith or I, or for listeners that we didn't get to talk about?
Well, I think we covered a lot of topics. I would say, obviously the HBA is an important resource to lean on to when you have issues or questions. We're always available at Roeser Homes to answer those. So they didn't listeners.
We know they respond quick.
And we respond quick. So if the listeners out there did not get an answer or have a question that we didn't respond to, we'd be more than happy to help
So if
them
they're
out.
standing in Home Depot and they're trying to figure out what bolt size to actually get, just call Roeser Homes. And
Yeah,
say, hey,
we will.
He's going to hate you for that.
We will.
feel it, but
We will
we'll
give
go
you
with
the customer support line of Home Depot, which is 1-800 Home Depot.
Well, we also want to know what you, the listener, wants to hear about in future podcast episodes. So drop us a line at kchba.org/podcast. Leave us a question, an idea, and we'd be happy to address it on a future episode of HBA After Hours. Again, this episode has been presented by First Federal Bank of Kansas City and Kansas Gas Service. And thanks, as always, to Austin Roeser.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thanks, Austin.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
So on behalf of Keith and myself, we hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.